On June 4th, 2018, Portland's Skyline Elementary School was holding their annual science fair and variety show day. The science fair was in the morning, the variety show was in the afternoon. They said it's like typically the busiest day of the school year. I mean, for good reason, it sounds like that. And just, you know, lots of people coming in and out of the school, kids coming early to set their stuff up, and lots of parents probably doing a lot of different things, right? 7-year-old Kyron Horman was there by 8 to set up, to get his presentation ready. He did a presentation on tree frogs, red-eyed tree frogs, and we now have what is probably the most notable photo of him that his stepmother Terri took after the science fair, after setting it up that day. He is wearing a blue CSI shirt with yellow letters, like the sweetest smile. His glasses are like kind of wonky, you know, in like the way that only like a really, really cute kid could pull off. He was so excited to be showing off his red-eyed tree frog display. Like, so excited. He had been talking about it for so long. His dad, Kane, couldn't be there because he had to work, and his mom, Desiree, also was unable to be there, but his stepmother, Terri, took him. Both of them had to work, and Desiree, his birth mom, actually lived, I believe, like an hour away. So they were there around 8 a.m. And then Terri said that she had left around 8:45 a.m. The last thing she saw was Kyron walking towards his classroom. She didn't stay to see him actually make it, but she, you know, assumed that he had made it into the classroom. And like, they're inside of school. You know what I mean? Like, I you know, from how it sounds, he was like right next to this classroom, I guess. Then a little bit later at 9 a.m., another student reports seeing him at like the south side entrance of the school. Homeroom from the 2nd grade class of Christina Porter started, she's the teacher, started at 10 a.m. and Kyron was marked absent. He never showed up for homeroom. At 1:21 p.m. that same day, Terri posts the photos that we looked at earlier to Facebook, you know, talking about him at the science fair, you know, just showing, kind of like showing him off. Then Kane, the dad, he got home around 2 p.m. that day and noted that Terri was home. She didn't work, so she had just been doing like, I mean, we'll get more into it later. So whatever. Kane, Terri, and Kiara, I think it's Kiara, who is her daughter, her and Kane's daughter, but not Kyron's full sister, if that, you know what I'm saying? Because Kyron's mom is Desiree, but it's his half sister. They all go to the bus stop at 3:30, but Kyron did not come off the bus. And it is then when the bus driver tells them that Kyron never came on the bus. They have the bus driver call the secretary, like immediately. And the secretary reports to them like, hey, it actually turns out that Kyron wasn't in any of his classes. The secretary is like taking the call from the mom and realizes that something is like horribly wrong, hangs up on Terri, on the stepmom, excuse me, and immediately calls the police. Like, she just knows that something's wrong. She calls the police, and the like secretaries tell the principal like, yeah, we know. Basically, they had a note saying that he was going to be going to the doctor's that day, but apparently either they or whoever gave them the note, most likely Terri, had messed up the day, and it was actually supposed to be the Friday after that. A lot of people are always like, well, why didn't the school freak out? Like, he wasn't marked absent all day. He was, and then the teachers would call and say like, hey, I don't have Kyron, and they'd be like, oh yeah, he's at the doctor. So that's why, you know what I mean? So then Susan Hall, the secretary, at 3:45 reports him missing, calls the cops, you know, and then at 5:30, a like mass broadcast goes out to all the parents reporting Kyron missing, saying like he didn't come home on the bus, kind of saying like, hey, does anyone know anything? Is he with you? You know, he did not arrive at home today. Then at 7 p.m., I'm probably gonna butcher this, Multnomah, I think that's how you say the name of this school district. But the Multnomah County Sheriff Detective, Sergeant Lee Gosson, alerted Sergeant Travis Goldberg, the like on-call coordinator for search and rescue efforts, to begin a formal missing person search for Kyron. So this is the same day. So love this, you know, we're actually acting at a timely manner, something we don't see enough. And this is again 2010. He is obviously a young boy, and you know, all I'm saying is throughout this case I think the police handles this like pretty remarkably, and I am not one to say that, you know, so I think it's just worth noting. Then the first search teams arrived at Skyline School at 8:09 p.m. And then shortly after, like right at 8:15, Lieutenant Mary Lindstrand also arrived at school and met with like whoever was there and began kind of like emailing a profile of Kyron to local media, like trying to get media involved. Deputy Mark Heron, the search and rescue coordinator who was previously contacted, arrives at 8:25 at the school. So then at 9:48 p.m., Mountain Wave, which is an emergency communications and search and rescue group, arrives on the scene. And then at 10:40, they had completed their first search of the area. Like they had reported like, hey, you know, we did that, and came out with nothing. And they're talking about literally inside the school, because this is a little, I mean, he's 3 feet tall. This is a little kid. So, you know, they have no idea what has happened at this point. He could have fallen or freaking anything. They have no idea. They have absolutely no idea. They look in all of the crawl spaces and storage places, and you know, all the little spots like that a like teeny tiny little guy could fall into. Something important to note about Kyron is his eyesight was like absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. That's why he had these like big wonky glasses. Really bad eyesight, and his biggest fear was like not being able to find his way home. So it's possible, or it's not likely that he like wandered, you know, into the woods, because he was so, at least not unlured, right? He was so scared of not being able to find his way back home, back to school, back to places. Then a few minutes later, a tipster called 911 and said like, hey, I need you to make sure that you check the train tunnel in the area because kids play in there. You know, somebody needs to check that. Literally so frightening. Such a frightening call to get, I can imagine. But they do come up with nothing, you know, whatever, but they check. We're gonna fast forward a little bit. It'll make sense later. So the next day, the Associated Press was involved, and this became like a pretty gnarly media fiasco. So then noon on Saturday, the sheriff held a press conference announcing that it was, you know, still a missing persons investigation. Which all that really means is that he's saying, hey, this is not a criminal investigation yet. Because obviously, once the press was involved more heavily, it became a freaking fiasco. Rightfully so. This is a 7-year-old boy who just disappears, right? Everyone who was at the school and like the day of the science fair and the variety show starts getting called saying like, we're gonna have y'all come back here and we're gonna interview everyone. And they start those interviews on Sunday, starting with the oldest children in the staff and then working their way down to the kids. On Sunday, Terri makes a Facebook post saying that she ordered like a bunch of flyers that are gonna be there soon, and she'll let people know when they come in, and thank you. You know, thanks for your help so far, and you know, all that, kind of just saying that, you know. So on Sunday too, an FBI profiler was brought in from Quantico, which is another move that I think is just like kind of important to mention by the local police here. Then, you know, as they continue to not find Kyron, the investigation does shift to a criminal investigation case, because 1,400 people from Oregon and California and Washington had, come out for what would be one of the biggest manhunts in Oregon history. Or not manhunt, biggest missing persons search in Oregon history, and came up, with absolutely nothing. So on June 26th, so this is like 2 weeks-ish after, 2-3 weeks after Kyron has disappeared, Kane moves out of his house that he shares with Terri and takes Kiara with him, filing a restraining order against Terri. So, full freaking stop, because it's about to get crazy. It's about to get crazy. Crazy, just like crazy things start to happen. In July, a landscaper who used to work for the Horman family, Terri and Kane and, comes out and tells detectives that Terri insinuated that she wanted him to put a hit out on her husband and have him do it. I'm like, that's suspicious. He basically didn't say it in so many words, and there was a language barrier, but which is like super convenient, obviously, for her. But he said that she had insinuated that he always has like $10,000 on him and a like expensive laptop. So if it looked like he got mugged, it wouldn't be crazy. Like, that's what she's telling this landscaping guy, and that he's just like horribly abusive, blah 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 blah. So that comes to light, and is I mean, it's a pretty wild thing that just starts to happen in this case. Suddenly the news like really starts to shift focus onto being, Terri centered, and Kane kind of starts to agree with this narrative, stating that he's kind of seeing things as they really are now. Desiree, the birth mom, said that she always had her suspicions about Terri, and that she had like a behavioral disorder, she was a pathological liar. These are things like she knew, and she knew that Kyron was wanting to move back in with her, and they were like in the process of trying to go to court for that. So it's kind of like a really unfortunate time. I mean, obviously there's no good time for something like this to happen, but then news comes out from this guy named Sean Rea. He's a previous boyfriend of Terry's, and he says that when they were dating, and this is, obviously way before we knew Kyron, way before his disappearance or anything, he tells the police that he's pretty sure she tried to have him murdered. Basically they were in a public place and a man comes out of the bushes with a gun, and Terri like screams, "He's here for you." And then the gunman backed out last minute. Like, lucky for this guy, thank God. Backed out last minute, and so then he broke up with her and didn't really speak about it until police reached out to him. Which I'm like, I mean, that's just crazy. He recalls like not really believing that happened, just being like pretty spellbound by the whole situation, which, I mean, I totally understand. That sounds like a total weird out-of-body experience. And yeah, something important to note is that Terri technically is never considered a suspect, but she's also never cleared of being a suspect. So I just think that's important to note. There's a lot of people who don't think that Terri is involved and think that, this kind of like evil stepmom plot has been planted. I'll give you the rest of her evidence and we'll see how you feel. But basically, again, I'll let you decide. I am not here to say what happened. Her alibi has changed quite a bit, which is why, people kind of have an issue with her. So let's go back to the day, June 4th or 7th, 2010. So let's get a little more in detail here. Terri brings Kyron to school around 8, like I said, and snaps these like what are now iconic photos. She claims to have left the school around 8:45 with both her infant, Kiara. So I think she might be like toddlery age, or maybe there's also an additional kid. I've heard different things. I've heard that she's just with an infant, and then I've heard that she's with a toddler. According to Terri, she like left school at that time to go run errands. So she went to 2 Fred Meyer's stores. She has receipts for one of them and is seen on like CCTV footage there when she kind of says she's there. However, her story was that she was trying to buy medicine for Kiara's earache, but that's not on the receipt. That doesn't happen. So, but that's why she went to both stores. So then from 10:10 to like 11:40, like an hour and a half, her alibi is that she was driving all around the rural roads of Multnomah County to try to get Kiara to settle because she has this earache, you know, ear infection. She's hurting. There's a lot of speculation here. Some people are like, wow, an hour and a half, that's crazy. Like, you're driving this long around for a kid, like that seems suspicious, blah, 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 blah. Other people are like, obviously you've never had kids, like, I don't know, I've had to do that, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. The interesting part is that basically the roads that she said that she was on, they looked for her car in footage and they didn't find it. Which is weird, because that's an hour and a half of time. You know what I mean? So obviously this really sets alarm bells off for investigators for quite a few reasons. But then after this, she heads to her gym, which is a 24-hour fitness, and they have like a daycare there. It's one of those where she could bring Kiara because she had a daycare. Now, this is also something that people really, really, really love to speculate about because, you know, this kid is supposedly like super sick and not feeling good, and then you're just like, fuck it, gym, you know? But also, like, you know, this is a mom, and this isn't like a little baby. There were some reports of her having, you know, pretty bad postpartum. And she was a bodybuilder at one time in her life. Really interesting. This girl's so interesting. I'm like, just whatever. But I can totally see, like, for me, working out is like my self-care, you know, so I get it. That's where I'm like, you know, maybe leave her alone a little bit. Whatever. People are still like, that's freaking weird. So she was at the gym for like 40 minutes and then drives home with Kiara, and she gets there around 12, around like 12:40. So we know that she was home at 1:21 because that's when she posts the photos from the science fair of Kyron, you know? Later down the line, so obviously we know really shortly after this she gets kicked out of her house. So clearly, you know, Kane believes that she has some involvement in this, which is, I mean, important to note, definitely important to mention. A lot of people think it's strange that he kind of like hopped on the bandwagon of not liking her as soon as the press was like, yo, this seems weird, you know? I mean, I really don't know. I don't want to say what's true and what's not true. I know that it is suspicious. She also stopped cooperating with the media because a few days after he went missing, she posted like hitting the gym, and a lot of people were kind of like up in arms about that. Again, it's not really evidence of anything, and it is something that people just like crazy frickin' speculate about. Is it weird? Yeah. But what I always say is like, I have no idea how I would act in that situation. So I have to give her some grace, at least a little bit there. Just like, I don't know, maybe it was that important to her and she was trying to like keep some routine, keep some normalness. again, I don't know. I do think it's a little weird to post it on your Facebook, but then she makes her Facebook private because of the way that she was treated after posting that. And I'm like, yeah. Yes, girl. Maybe you shouldn't have posted that. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you shouldn't have posted that. Something important to note is that Terri's son, oldest son, who is from a different marriage, was recently kicked out of the Horman household. A lot of people think that this could be some sort of motive for her. You know, she was clearly having some issues with Kane, and I say clearly because then it's revealed very quickly after after her and Kane are no longer living together. She has been having an affair with the neighbor. Because basically all these like sexts come out. It's just not a good look. So those come out, and it was clear that they had also like had sex in person. She claims it was a plot to get back at Kane for something that he had done to her, like that was similar, but you know, that does sound kind of convenient. I don't know. It's your life. Believe whatever you want. Later, she would also be arrested for stealing a gun from her roommate / boyfriend who, you know, he believes this was with intent to murder him. Not a good look. You know, really not a good look. And then she was also arrested for domestic abuse again later. And this was like she was holding a knife up to her partner and threatening to kill him. There are like a shit ton of theories, and there's so much more that I could go into about Terri, but I'm trying not to make the prime focus, you know, just like fuck this bitch, but I do think it's important to mention the weird stuff that she did, like that her alibi keeps changing, but she is still, you know, to this day a free woman, continues to be a free woman, because they don't have any evidence pinning her to this disappearance, which is pretty crazy. A lot of people think, because it's less than 1% of abductions are done by someone that you don't know, that doesn't know the child in some way, shape, or form. However, it was like a really opportunistic event because, you know, basically they, for the last few weeks, had this sign out saying, you know, we're having this event where teachers and parents and kids are coming in and out all day for this double event thing. So if some really terrible person wanted to do something, it would have been like an opportunity to do that. Bobo. Obviously, you know, let me know what you think. There's a lot of theories. Like I said, there's a lot of, I mean, if you look this case up, the majority of the social media and the coverage is like, including that of, you know, all of the family, is pretty dead set on thinking that Terri did it. But there are also, like I said, a lot of Terri forgivers out there. A lot of people who think maybe she was just pinned in a really bad light. So I would love to know your thoughts. Obviously, if you choose to go down the rabbit hole, do your best to not be misinformed. I will put my sources below. The local media for this county did a pretty phenomenal job just in everything. I mean, wow. Let's just go ahead and say that. But especially in the reporting of this. So check that out and let me know what I should do next. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Smoochies.